Welcome to the pilot episode of 51 Shades of Grey. I am your host, Sean Grayson. See what I did there? And formerly of the Sell or No Sell Wrestling podcast. I thought it made a lot of sense to start my own podcast individually and talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of professional wrestling. And I thought I'd do it in a way that made a lot of sense for the viewer, right? I don't want to go crazy long. I actually just want to go 51 minutes, right? 51 Shades of Grey. It's not a sex podcast, it's a wrestling podcast. We're going to go for 51 minutes. What we're going to talk about a little bit about is we're going to talk a little bit about WWE, AEW, TNA, PLEs, my thoughts on different things, and in reality, the world of wrestling, which is really made in the gray. Got a little logo up there in the top, I think the top right. I'd like to eventually get a situation where I have a countdown clock. But the thought process was, let's get on here, let's voice the opinions of a fan, right, with no affiliation to any organization at all, but with someone with some cool ideas and thoughts of as to what's going on in the world of professional wrestling. So let's get into it. My thought process, when talking a little bit about the Raw recap, is we got a 3-hour show. And within a 3-hour show, I think that it, I would say for the past 8 to 10 years, 3 hours seemed like a long time. A lot of time it was filler space. Not in the Triple H regime, not in the Triple H era. You find yourself not being able to turn off the TV or to change the channel. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Florida, Edmonton last night, yet we all kind of veered ourselves towards watching Raw for 3 hours. It's crazy to even think about when I used to think about just watching Raw for 3 hours and fast forwarding through potential segments, backstage interviews, vignettes, when you can't do that anymore. It's gotten to a point where in no way, shape, or form are you able to at all shift off of it. You have situations where backstage interviewers have background trailers in the background that kind of give you hints of things, or backstage conversations that are 100 feet away from the actual interview that's happening, that if you're not really paying attention to the background, you're going to miss half of the situation. And that's where I kind of want to begin. For weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, we have watched backstage interviews happen on Monday Night Raw. And in the background, you'd find Liv Morgan. You would find Finn Balor, Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough. You would never find Damian Priest, but you'd find those people conversing. And it was just like a little nugget, a little touch point. And thus, when this story kind of started with Liv and Dom, you got a situation where everything became to the forefront of what was being told on Monday nights. So let's talk about what's been told on Monday nights with our Raw recap. Raw was amazing. Now, was Raw as strong as the week before? Maybe. It was good. It's hard because you have Raw, you have SmackDown, and then you have Raw again. And I mean, SmackDown was straight fire. We won't even talk about that. There's not enough time in the day to talk about that 2-hour masterpiece, like Emmy winning masterpiece. Just everything laid out so perfectly, from the debut of Jacob Fatu to what's going on, obviously, with Cody, and what's going on with all the different avenues of that show. CM Punk, Drew McIntyre on that show. It was great. Again, way too much time to be able to talk about that at all. So let's get into Raw, and let's talk about how it started. So you have a situation where Drew McIntyre comes in, and you have a upset McIntyre, a what did you expect after I destroyed CM Punk McIntyre. What's cool about what Drew is doing now, it all seems very real to him. You look back in time and you think about where he was, where he came from, how he was on the microphone, especially even when he came back, right, as kind of a partner with Dolph Ziggler. Uh, you know, you have him really coming into his own over the last, I would say, year, last year or so. Really, like, truly, really coming into his own. His in ring work was always good, but now his mic skills are, because he's believing in himself, right? What's interesting about Drew is Drew's a heel, right? We know this, right? Drew is a heel. Drew is a bad guy. Yet you can kind of feel for the guy, right? Like CM Punk being that predominant baby face, not a white meat baby face like Cody, where everybody loves him, but like CM Punk is doing heelish things. It's what he's doing. He is, causing matches to change. Causing Drew to lose matches just based on different things, whether it's him dressing up as a referee or him losing the title based on Damian Priest cashing the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. Just all these different things that CM Punk is doing that are very heelish. Yet we cheer him. We cheer the heel. It's a gray area, right? That's what we talk about, 51 Shades of Grey. It's a gray area. But primarily, wrestling in 2024, that's a gray area as well. Heels that get cheered, baby faces that get booed, areas by which you're just unsure of who's really the bad guy in any situation. There aren't really many real baby faces, real heels anymore, right? You have your white meat baby faces, your Jey Usos, your Cody Rhodes, but like that real heel, like back in the day, Baron Corbin, right? Everybody hated Baron Corbin. Do you elicit that answer now to Dominic Mysterio? Maybe. Everybody boos him. But I got to be honest, if you look at where Dominic Mysterio was 2 years ago, I was booing him for a completely different reason. I was booing him because he sucked. Yeah, he was a kid. Wasn't really good on the microphone. His in-ring ability was subpar at best. And by the way, I'm no in-ring performer, but I have watched wrestling for 35 years. And you know what's good and what's bad. And it wasn't good. Now he's learning on the job, as some of us are, right? You get hired to a job. Maybe there's not a good training model. And you kind of just learn on the job and learn on your own. And so he was doing that. But it really wasn't until he joined the Judgment Day that he became this dirty Dom character with help of Rhea and Finn and all of the people that really help him along the way on the road to be this character. And now he's taken this whole different avenue of things. What they are doing with this Liv Dom storyline is amazing. And what's cool about it is it's peppered in throughout the show, right? It's for 3 hours. It's peppered in throughout the show. And there's a common denominator in this whole thing. It's Liv Morgan, right? So you have a situation with Liv Morgan where, she made it abundantly clear, that she was going to take everything that Rhea had. What does that really mean, though? Does that mean, well, let's talk about what she's done so far. So she's taken Rhea's title. Now, I look at that as kind of a little different of a situation. She didn't really take Rhea's title. Becky Lynch had the title. Rhea took, Liv took from Becky. So it was kind of a Passover type thing. It's kind of like, that's kind of like Cody Rhodes took the title from Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar gave essentially the title to Roman Reigns. And that doesn't kind of work like that. But she has the title, which was at one point owned by Rhea Ripley. She has infiltrated in funny, comedical ways the Judgment Day, buying a PS5 for the group, which I thought was funny, and I thought was really funny was like the 200 chicken nuggets that Dominic Mysterio was chomping on throughout the show, and even Liv was chomping on them at some point later on down the line with a backstage situation with Finn Balor. But she's peppered in throughout the show. I mean, look at what she's doing. She very slowly, in a one-off scenario, is doing different things to ingratiate herself to the Judgment Day. And so what is she doing? Right, obviously, she's doing. She's sending the pictures to Dom. She's calling Dom Daddy Dom, explaining that Rhea never really gave him anything. Right, so in one regard, she's in his head. Well, then she's buying all of this the stuff for the I want to say the Judgment Day like boys club, if you will, right? But she's ingratiating herself to like Carlito, who thinks it's very cool what she's doing, right? Doesn't want to say it, but so one after the other, and then she's talking to R-Truth, and she's convincing R-Truth to give Finn Balor and JD McDonough a tag team title match for the end of the night. So she's ingratiating herself with them. And very slowly but surely, she's getting over in the Judgment Day. Now, the only person that she's not getting over with is Damian Priest. But I ask you to think about this for a second. Because the story is really multifaceted, right? There's no reason, to be brutally honest, there is no reason that Damian Priest, the world heavyweight champion, should be focusing in on this nonsense. And it sets up for what we're going to talk about a little bit later in the promo, the promo battle between Seth and Damian. We'll go back to it. But she's really doing what it takes to convince them that she's not that bad. So where is it going? It could go 5,000 different ways. It could go in a way where Rhea comes back and maybe we have a situation where, Priest is not really bought in. Dom has continued to say no. So, you have a situation where you have Rhea, Dom, and Damian versus Liv, JD, Finn. That'd be kind of cool, right? Or maybe you just have a situation where it's a Liv Rhea thing and you have Dom turn on Rhea eventually. Or maybe it's as simple as the hero comes back because she was super over before she got hurt. Again, in a heel faction with a started heel but turned babyface. It's that gray area of everything. It's almost in the eye of the beholder. So you have that gray area of what's going to happen. Maybe the hero comes back, right? The hero comes back and defeats, the Liv Morgan and everybody is happy. I don't necessarily think that's probably going to happen that way, but it could. It could. So that was peppered in throughout the show. What else was going on in the show? The other ideas or the other situations on the show were talking about, obviously, the Money in the Bank qualifying matches, as well as the emergence of Braun Breaker. Now, I know for weeks he's been categorized as this crazy unbeatable. And I think they backed themselves in a corner and they had to kind of go the route that they did. Because when you back yourself into a corner, you end up having to come up with ideas that make sense. And those ideas that make sense were, well, inevitably, you can't have Braun Breaker take a loss with anywhere, shape, or form, except maybe for a disqualification or something like that. But you can't have a 1, 2, 3. Defeats the purpose of the character. So you have a situation where you have two people. You have Kaiser, who you're building up, and Braun Breaker, you're building up in a different way. And they're wrestling each other, and it was a pretty good match. It went pretty long, and it ended up being a really good match. Ended by Sheamus popping up, knocking Kaiser out, and all of a sudden you start having essentially a situation where you're going to get eventually probably a fatal four way for the IC title. That's probably where we're going with this story. It might not be at Money in the Bank in Toronto in a few weeks. It might be in SummerSlam. I think inevitably you look at Braun Breaker and his tanness and his insane ability to maneuver and move in the ring and his very Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner-esque attitude on the microphone. And then you look at a situation that is being booked right now, which is Braun Breaker versus Sami Zayn and Money in the Bank, and you say, look, what do we do here? Now, I've been on record and said that I don't like Sami Zayn's reign. I didn't believe that Gunther needed to lose at WrestleMania to drop the IC title. I thought that he could have won there the next night, could have told everybody, look, I have done it all. I don't need to defend this anymore. It's time for me to go somewhere else and do something else. They didn't do it that way. They did it in a way that makes Gunther look, I think, a little weak. But look, a loss can happen anywhere, right? Literally, a loss can happen anywhere, and we got that. And I don't like Sami Zayn's reign. I think it's like a lot of people are different where that's concerned. Everybody loves Sami. I think that you have the same kind of people running amok, if you will, right? So you have Sheamus in the background still, right? Still chasing that elusive Intercontinental title. Thank God Chad Gable's out of it now. We'll get into Chad not dying in a couple minutes. But you have a situation that you have at Money in the Bank where you can go one of two ways in this current setup. You just have Braun Breaker win outright, and now he's the new IC champion. Or you have kind of a screwy finish where other people get involved, and thus it lengthens the storyline to finish essentially at SummerSlam. Maybe we do that. I don't mind if you don't want to put the title on Braun Breaker right at this moment, or even at SummerSlam, I don't mind a situation where you have Kaiser, Sheamus, Sami Zayn, in a situation where you're having a fatal four-way. Braun doesn't have to take the pin. Kaiser can take the pin. Sheamus can take the pin. And thus you strengthen whoever you want. Maybe Sheamus, maybe you give it to Sheamus, right? And he takes the pin. Kaiser takes the pin on Sheamus. You get the title off of Sami. You still keep Braun strong. It's a win-win where that's concerned. But I told you I just mentioned Chad Gable. So for last week, and we'll get into the Wyatt Six and the phenomenal job that creative is doing with this for the past 2 weeks. I found it very funny. Chad Gable comes in with security. He's got a little stitch up here. He comes in. He wins his Money in the Bank match with Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman, and ends up qualifying for Money in the Bank. I don't see him winning at all. I'll tell you who I think is going to win. I think it'd be really funny if he does win. But what's interesting was after the match with Chad, Chad is standing in the ring, and you hear the Wide Six music. The very, and for those of you who don't know the Wide Six music, it is the beginning stages so far of Bray Wyatt's, the last music he used on camera. The very beginning, the dinging, very beginning of it all. And what I think is really cool was you have, I guess it's Sister Abigail at this point, maybe Sister Nikki, right? Nikki Cross. Man, she gets in the ring, scares Chad to death. He drops down, he gets out of dodge, if you will. And she makes her way from the smokiness of the ring down and hands a box to Michael Cole. And then walks out. What's really cool about the walkout, which I don't think a lot of people picked up on, was the fact that there was no security around this wrestler, right? This person, essentially, Nikki Cross, Sister Abigail. And but they had that one pan spotlight just kind of hitting her, and then she walked out into the crowd and she left. The lights went up. Michael Cole has this box. After the commercial, he comes back. I was handed this box. Everybody's going to open it. It's a VHS tape. I thought it was hilarious that he referenced the fact that, I haven't seen a VHS tape in 25 years. By the way, VHS was how we did it back in the day, people. I remember having a VHS tape of WrestleMania 4 when I re-recorded it over WrestleMania 6 to re-record over WrestleMania 8. And then at that point, that kind of string or the film snapped off and c'est la vie. But that's a VHS tape, right? So he's got to be in production, and let's talk about production. Let's see if we can't get the show into production. While that was going on, we get into production. While that was going on, you had Drew McIntyre in the back with Adam Pearce basically saying, look, I want to be in the Money in the Bank match. Just put me in it. Like, come on. And look, to be honest, again, that gray area in between, Drew had a point. The heel has a point. That doesn't happen in any other year, any other regime. This heel has a point. He's been screwed and screwed and screwed and screwed and screwed and screwed and screwed. And what was crazy was talking to Adam Pearce. Adam Pearce basically in the beginning saying, like, I don't care what you want. And then he's saying, well, wait a minute. Didn't you quit? And Drew was like, yeah, I did kind of, but really not. Okay, so it's all good now? Why do you think you deserve this? And then he's rattling off reasons why. Forget about the fact that he definitely does deserve it. But what's great about that is Drew goes, well, wait a minute. Seth Rollins comes back after an injury, after Drew beat him at WrestleMania, automatically he's in a title match at Money in the Bank. And you hear Adam Pearce go, that was good stuff by Drew. And he says, look, someone needs to be a good guy here. Drew's saying someone needs to be a good guy, or else if you're not, I will show you destruction. We'll show you devastation. And we find out eventually that Drew is now put into one hell of a Money in the Bank qualifier. I think it's with Sheamus and also Ilya Dragunov. Pretty sure it's Sheamus as well. I look for Drew to win that. And I honestly look for Drew to win the Money in the Bank. I think that would be phenomenal. Like, phenomenal. How hilarious would it be? The dude who hates the Money in the Bank briefcase is the one now carrying it. What he does with it, I don't know. Will Punk screw him again? I think there's just storylines and the storylines. But then we get out of those kind of things, and now we're into finding, I guess, the production truck and this video. I want to spend some time, a little bit of time now, talking about this video. I thought this video was amazing. One of the critiques I have or concerns I have with the Wyatt Six is what happens after all these smoke and mirrors. All of the hoopla is done. When the bell rings, what happens, right? Because in theory, if you're building them up to be this scary faction, they have to win. They can't just lose. And I don't even think that, I mean, personally, I don't even think they should be wrestling at all for a long time. But you have this faction, this group, this cult destroying everybody last week. You have extra security around, and now you're watching a video. And as great as the camera work was yesterday, I mean last week, because the camera work was phenomenal with how they shot that last 6 to 7 minutes of Monday Night Raw. This was just as good. VHS tape, very old school looking, square box type thing. And you have a conversation inside of the Firefly Funhouse. If you see it, you pay attention to it. You have to maybe watch it twice. You have Uncle Howdy, and you have not Bo Dallas at all. It's not Bo Dallas. You could say, well, Sean, it's Bo Dallas. No. Bo Dallas is a made-up character from NXT. And as it got to WWE's main roster, it's the Believe character. It's a character. Like Uncle Howdy is a character. Who you got was Taylor Rotunda. That is who you got. The real life brother of Wyndham Rotunda, also known as Bray Wyatt. And the conversation with Uncle Howdy and Taylor Rotunda was emotional. It was unavoidable. And the reason why I say it was unavoidable, you have this Uncle Howdy character played by Taylor Rotunda as well. So again, love the cutting and all of those things. I wish people could cut my podcast like that, or someone could just cut my podcast because I have no idea what I'm doing. But you have this character that's talking to Taylor, basically telling him every character that he was doing prior, he just failed. And Taylor acknowledging those things and Uncle Howdy asking, like, what was it like? How do you feel since your brother has died? Real emotion, real life. This is Taylor Rotunda talking to Uncle Howdy about how he feels, no differently than if you or I were sitting after a funeral and we're sitting on the couch and we're just talking. This is what you got. You got an emotional attachment to this character. Now, everybody knows, and if you don't, I don't know what you're doing or anything like that. You know that Taylor Rotunda is Uncle Howdy. But now you have a situation where you feel for the character, Uncle Howdy. You feel for who's underneath the mask of Taylor Rotunda. In wrestling, it's very important for you to feel. Let me explain really quick. I'm a huge Cody Rhodes fan. Massive Cody Rhodes fan. Some people might even call me a Cody crybaby. I don't care. I was at WrestleMania 40. And when I tell you the buy-in from 95% of the stadium audience pulling for Cody Rhodes when the 1, 2, 3 happened. You felt it. You got emotional. You cried. No differently than if you have your favorite sports team. Anybody probably who was a serious Florida Panthers fan when they won the Stanley Cup last night. You felt it. You cried with joy. And in this situation, you're not necessarily crying with joy, but you're feeling a level of attachment or emotion because we've all been there. We've all failed. For anybody who's ever listening to this, if you haven't failed, you must be like 2 years old. And at 2 years old, you probably failed at something too. Failure breeds improvement. What is the Rocky Balboa motto, right? The Rocky Balboa motto in that movie, what he said was, I think he said something along the lines of, life is not rainbows and unicorns. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, but it's pretty much like how you can get up. That's how winning is done. And if you think that, you're worse up, and go find it, essentially. And I butchered that a little bit, but you kind of get the idea. I felt for that character of Uncle Howdy, but I felt for the man of Taylor Rotunda. And I hope that each week, I hope that Uncle Howdy sits down with each of the other people and talks to them in that way. I don't think we're going to get it that way. But how cool would it be to feel each character? Let's talk about each character. I told you I wanted to go a little long with this. Taylor Rotunda did more in that 5-minute video than Bo Dallas did all through NXT and WWE. Yeah, he won the NXT title, and that's great. But nobody felt for him. Bo Lee character. It was funny. Hanging out with with the old Curtis Axel and all those things towards the end of it. And he won a WWE, I think, tag team title in some point when the tag team titles really didn't matter too much. But Taylor Rotunda, my God. Can you imagine as well, eventually, when they do wrestle, if when you strip back the Uncle Howdy character, and again, I don't know if they're going to strip it back, but if you strip back the Uncle Howdy character, and maybe you get Taylor Rotunda wrestling, the pain in his eyes, you see it, you feel it. You got to feel. If wrestling doesn't make you feel, you're not understanding it. You're not getting it. So think about this. And again, I don't know if they're going to go this route, but really think about this. You have next week, Sister Abigail, i.e. Nikki Cross, and she's sitting there. Let's talk about Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross had a lot of hoopla, but to be honest, she's been a mid-card talent at best. Yes, she had a WWE Women's Championship run when she did that kind of superhero thing. But in reality, it's nothing like this. We can talk about that. What if, let's talk about Eric Rowan, Eric Redbeard, whatever you want to call him, and he's sitting down and he's sitting down with Uncle Howdy and he's talking. Besides Taylor Rotunda, what other person besides Braun Strowman, who came a little later in the Wyatt family, have a more of a relationship with Bray Wyatt than Eric Rowan? And to top that off, he's the only one left. Because John Huber, a.k.a. Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt are gone. They've passed. And here's Eric Rowan, one of the original members of the Wyatt family. You imagine like how he feels? Let's talk about how he feels for a second, right? I want to put something in perspective for you. Luke Harper passes away. John Huber, right? Passes away. And AEW brings in Eric Redbeard, Eric Rowan for the 10 bell salute. He's there. I think he brought him for a match too, right? He's there for that. Not contracted. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure that at least at that moment when Bray Wyatt passed away and they did the 10 bell count, he might have been contracted because they were working out characters and stuff like that. But that was the first time you actually saw him on TV for a while. Right? So what better person to talk about this and to feel than Eric Rowan? Then you have Dexter Lumis. Crazy character in NXT, built like, mustache, slick back hair, Indy Hartwell, like all that nonsense, right? Popping up on the rings and stuff like that. And it just doesn't, it was cool, but it just doesn't work on the main roster. It comes on the main roster, it really doesn't work that well. Now he's gone. I don't know how many matches he had on the main roster at all. And I wish I did, but I don't. God, he could talk about the failure of his character, what he's done, and you become invested in them. You take Joe Gacy. I'm not a big watcher originally of Joe Gacy, so I would be actually the perfect person to do this to. Didn't watch him much in NXT. He hasn't really been on the main roster. Pitter-pattering backstage probably. And he could talk about that as well. And now you have a situation where you feel for all of these characters because they're real people, and you feel for their real person. They're real person. You feel this. And yet, the feeling is not the exuberation that Cody Rhodes had when he won the title, but you're feeling something. There are a lot of wrestlers, they say, when they come out in the crowd, or when they come out to wrestle, they say, look, you can... Miz has said this many times. If you boo me or you cheer me, doesn't matter. It's the reaction that matters. So you could sit there and, boo, 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 boo. That's a reaction. You can cheer, cheer, cheer. That's a reaction. But when you don't have a reaction, something is wrong. And what they're doing with this Wyatt Six group for the past 2 weeks, and people could say like the things that they popped up with the QR codes, it's happened way longer than that. But what they've done on TV in the past 2 weeks is gold. I was about to curse. Try not to. Put it in the swear jar. It's gold. It's great business. It's going to be good marketing too. I heard something on Busted Open Radio this morning. And shout out to Busted Open Radio. 24/7, right? I'm a huge Busted Open fan. And somebody called in and said, how cool would it be to, from a merchandise standpoint, they were talking about like who the sixth is. And by the way, I'm really confused by that. They're spelled, I know they're playing a play on words, the Wyatt Six, right? And six is SICKS, right? Six, you're sick, right, with an S. So it's not really six. I tend to think the Wyatt Six were Bray Wyatt and everybody else that's already in the group. But the guy came on and said, look, what if we're the sixth? What if we're the Fireflies? How cool would it be if merchandise-wise, you like sold this like white mask, and one day, everybody had these white masks. Maybe even you handing out, WWE takes like the heat for that, hosted in like a 10,000 square, 10,000 seat stadium. Don't do like a 50,000 where everybody's got the whites. But I'll mention we're all the Fireflies and we're all the Masks. We're the Sixth. I don't know. The thing is, we're looking at this like this story can go all these different ways. Where I really don't want the story to go yet is I don't want a match at SummerSlam yet. I don't want any of those things. They don't have to. Everything doesn't have the payoff. Everything in wrestling needs a payoff, right? The payoff is what we're experiencing. Sit back, watch it, experience it, feel it inside of you. Don't sit there and go, man, they destroyed the backstage area 2 weeks ago and in the gorilla position. And man, we saw Chad Gable, but you know who'd be really good there? Otis. Stop. Just experience it and love it. And I know I carried on a lot with this, but I think it's good television. It's great television. It makes you not turn off the channel. When the Monday Night Wars were happening, in the beginning of the Monday Night Wars, especially for NWO, I could never turn off the channel. And remember, there was no DVRs back then. That didn't exist. I had a black box, right? So I got the free pay-per-views. But I could, Nitro was at 8 o'clock. Monday Night Raw was at 9. But I never, in the beginning of the NWO, I could never turn off Nitro. The reason why I couldn't turn off Nitro is I didn't know who was showing up next. I didn't want to miss somebody joining the NWO. I was loving it. Now, when you flash forward a little bit, and tonight is another episode, by the way, of on Vice TV of Who Killed WCW, since we're on that kind of subject matter right now. Towards the end of WCW, then I'm watching WWE more, WWF at that time more, because you're watching DX and you're watching The Undertaker and you're watching the Ministry and you're watching all this stuff, and it's exciting and it's ever evolving and it just is. It's awesome. It was awesome. So, but I find myself in the last 18 months or so really loving what the WWE is doing. Now, there were times during the end of the Vince regime, I said it, I used the bad word, I used the word Vince, where, God, Monday Night Raw was tough to watch. In fact, I was really happy when football was on in football season, because I was like, I don't need to watch this. I'll just catch up on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. But you can't do that now. You want to experience it. You want to be a part of it. And we'll get talking about SmackDown and God, all of those things at some other time, because we're just really covering Raw. But I find myself just really loving Raw. So let's talk about the main event, right? I know we touched on it a little bit, right? Look what Liv did. You have The Miz and R-Truth versus JD McDonagh and Finn Balor. And remember, I told you in the beginning of our talk today was that Liv was peppered in throughout the show. She very much so. And I know this is a weird comparison. I want you to think about, it's really happening now too, but really much so in the beginning of the Bloodline storylines. Roman Reigns and the Usos were really peppered in throughout the show. Now, again, I'm not comparing the Bloodline to Liv Morgan at all. What I'm saying is she's peppered in throughout the show. She's earning her paycheck. And what was great was you had your continuing storylines with that tag team title match, right? You have Dom and you have JD. You have Dom and you have you have JD and you have Finn, and everybody's trying to help. Liv was there. They're all trying to help essentially Finn and JD win the titles from The Miz and R-Truth. And you inevitably get a situation where Liv hugs R-Truth, talks about the love that Dom and Liv have for each other. I see it, I feel it. Drops him down on the rope. Finn Balor capitalizes. We get a 1-2-3 new tag team champions. At the same time, about 5 minutes before that, you had Braun Strowman chasing Carlito and Dom out of the way. Dom leaves. But what's interesting is that, and congratulations to the Miz and R-Truth for the 79-day run. Very comical run. I loved it. I don't think they need the titles for it. R-Truth is amazing with what he does, and the Miz is always great in what he does. But you have a situation where you have Finn and JD at the top of the ramp. They're holding up their titles. As Raw's about to go off the air, you have your little Raw silhouette thing on the bottom right side. Just like I have my logo on the bottom top right. Isn't that a cool logo? 50 Shades of Grey wrestling ring. I think it's pretty cool. And then you have Liv Morgan pop right in between them with her title. And Finn just kind of looked and was like, cool. Thank you. I acknowledge it. Great. Boom, Raw goes off the air. Where is this going? Makes you want to tune in for more. It does. It was great. But as great as it was, to me, besides the video, the Wyatt VHS, the greatest part of the night was, I think, the promo work between Seth and Damian Priest. The call out, the back and forth, the Seth playing the Woe character, but not really the Woe character, but really bring it back to Seth. And Damian, again, we're talking about the gray area. Heels don't challenge baby faces to a title match when they're the champion. So Damian really kind of hugs that line of really that gray area in between of really, what is he? And I find it interesting, again, because we're peppering this in throughout the show, of what's going to happen in the Judgment Day. Because what ends up happening is, Seth is, visually really happy that, he accepted, that Priest, essentially asked, to face him for the title, but he wanted to stir up the pot a little bit. And so what he did was he said, look, if I lose, I can't even challenge until you're until you're not the champion anymore. But if you lose, you got to take my road. What does he mean by that? I'll tell you what he means by that. And leave the Judgment Day. Just like Seth left the Shield, did it, and went and did it on his own. And so again, you find this kind of back and forth of like, what's going to happen? Because if you remove Damian from the equation of the leader of the Judgment Day, then what do you have? You just have a bunch of people, which is good, trying to help each other out. Because I don't think that Damian really needs them. But who am I? I'm just a fan. Now, not only was that amazing, but what we all know to be true is that Gunther comes out during this promo and says, hey, I don't care. You two are great. I respect both of you. But it doesn't matter who wins. Because at SummerSlam, I'm taking that title. I believe he will. Gunther is a man's wrestler. He's a man's man. He makes the titles better. Like he did the IC title for over 600 days. He's going to elevate this title. I know they're trying to. But he's going to elevate this title at SummerSlam on, I think, August the 3rd in Cleveland, Ohio. And then he's going to go, hopefully, to the Bash at Berlin in his home country and defend it. I hope that's the writing on the wall because he deserves it. He's put in the work, the time. People forget while all of these other stories are going on. This is Gunther. This is Gunther's Raw. Seth, Monday Night Rollins. No, this is Gunther's, and it will be Gunther's. Hopefully in August. So that's the Raw recap. It was filled with ups and downs, emotions, hilarious moments, serious situations. But if you didn't feel anything, then wrestling is not for you. I know it's for me. And I appreciate you listening to the pilot episode of 51 Shades of Grey.